Here it comes, a brand new day, but I don't know what will come my way. Rise or fall, your love will see me through it all.
All right, we're back. It's been a while. The Word with God podcast. We have a co-host. Haven't seen your face in some time on this podcast. No one's seen my face on this podcast because it's been over a year, I think, since I've done one.
Oh my.
But what's your name again, young lad?
Stan.
Yeah, so the kids listening at home can know
Stan,
who you're.
Stan Starkey.
All right, and do we all know each other?
I think so.
Yeah.
I would say so.
So we did a podcast before with this young lady here, and we spoke about Mormonism and some mental health stuff, and I went back and I listened to that because you told me you'd listen to it, and the takeaways were that if you ask Sam for money, he will give it to you.
Always.
That I said I was gonna write a book on Mormonism, and that's why I was asking you all those questions. That was a joke, though.
Okay.
And anyway, you came up to me and said, let's do another one and less about Mormonism.
Yeah.
This time.
I think you need to interview Sam.
Yeah.
To get the Mormon
So
perspective.
I still only brought questions about Mormonism.
Okay, then I'm gone.
But I know this is a great update. Like we all have had major updates since the last time we did this. I was not married when we last did one of these with you. I also didn't have a puppy then. Stan, you were senior pastor at our church the last time we did this.
Yes.
And what about you? What's going on?
I was a student, and I'm still a student.
Okay.
But I've become a grandmother since.
Yeah, that
That's
was
a big
I
change.
was wondering if
Mhm.
when the first one was. I don't know how many years ago this was.
Well, we podcast about, would have been 6 years ago.
Oh boy,
Mm-hmm.
man, time's flying.
Because I was in my second year of school, and I'm now in my 7th year of school.
Yeah.
And my oldest grandchild is Henry, who is 4.
Oh
So
my
4 years
gosh.
ago.
And one of their takeaways was at the time you said that you wanted to be in something really hands-on. That was
Yes. Yes.
So
That's happening.
It is.
Yes. I am officially now a registered psychotherapist qualifying.
Yeah.
So I work as a counselor, a therapist, and I meet with people regularly, weekly, and hands-on, right in there.
So what does that qualifying mean? Is it like
Oh.
they haven't made up their mind yet about you, or?
Kind of.
Oh, okay.
So I'm under the College of Registered Psychotherapists of Ontario, registered with them.
Mhm.
And there's a qualifying period, which means I have to collect so many hours of direct client work before I can drop the title qualifying.
Ah.
So I'm about halfway there, and the hope is that this October I will write the exam, pass the exam, finish my 450 hours, which is what's required to drop the qualifying title.
Okay.
And then I will just be, which is a better place to be, a registered psychotherapist.
And how is it?
How is it?
How is all this?
Love it. I work with people with all difficulties, struggles, different pursuits. It's not always about a struggle. It's just that they need to talk to somebody. And I offer family therapy, individual therapy, a little bit of couples work. Just walking alongside people and helping them discover kind of what's the next steps for them.
Do you have a type of person or I guess area where you're like, yeah, this is it. Like when someone walks in and this kind of thing is what's going on with them, that's where you feel like you really
That's kind of my
shine.
niche.
Yeah.
Yeah, so my specialty is trauma and grief. And grief can look like a lot of different things. It's not about somebody dying necessarily. It's about a loss somewhere in their life that is affecting them. And then trauma can come from multiple sources. I do particularly like to work with women who've been traumatized. But I have worked with families and individuals, males and females.
How do you describe trauma? what that means.
Oh, trauma is different for every single person. There's not just one kind of picture of what trauma looks like. Trauma affects them in their life in a way that it's difficult to move forward. It's difficult to manage stress, regulate their emotions, handle things, new things coming on to them on
Yeah.
top of what they're already experiencing.
What do you think of this? Going through things that I'm going through, they said childhood trauma is one of the things that cause the mental health issues that I have.
Mhm.
And they're asking, like, did you experience trauma as a child?
Mhm.
And I think, no, because I think of trauma as certain things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they said, think of trauma as if what happened to you as a child happened to your own child or another child, would you be okay with it? And then I was like, oh, that changes it, because
Yeah.
it's not such a heavy sounding word.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you think of that definition?
Yeah, I think that is a really good way to put it in perspective for people. So trauma can come from a parent who is aggressive, maybe
Mhm.
domineering, narcissistic, maybe an alcoholic parent, an absent parent.
Mhm.
All of that can create trauma or instability for the child, and because of that, things that are happening in his life today are being affected because he remembers back. So maybe trust issues, maybe the marriage that he's in now is affected because the well, I guess now adult remembers back to how his parents reacted, or the fact that the father wasn't in the house at the time. And so there's a book Von der Kolk wrote called "The Body Keeps the Score." And it's how our bodies, even though our minds might not remember things, our body remembers things. So a smell could happen, and all of a sudden you feel yourself tense up.
Mhm.
A sound, and all of a sudden you're like looking around for danger. Those are all responses our bodies have from
Mhm.
things happening in our life
So,
previously.
and because it's not necessarily always clear, like,
That's correct.
because when you think of trauma in the way most of us think of it, you think it's obvious.
Mhm.
This happened, and then, oh yeah, because that happened, that's why I'm the way I am today. But a lot of times, this is like, actually, it's, I don't know, what do we say, not as black and white, not as, there's not as easy of a trail to follow, because you're not responding in the way you would expect to respond,
Mhm.
because you think of trauma as a certain way and you think of the response to trauma
Yeah.
being a certain way. It's like, oh yeah, I mean, I guess an obvious one would be like, I was mauled by a dog when I was a child. This
Mhm.
didn't actually, no, one really did bite my bum. But so I was scared of German Shepherds for a little bit.
Mhm.
But that happens and you get really bad, and then you're scared of dogs for
Yes.
life.
Yeah.
That's easy, obvious connection. But there's a lot of things that you help people unravel,
Yes.
where it's like, oh my gosh, that was happening to me. I
Mhm.
never even realized that that was a big deal for me. And I didn't realize that I have social anxiety today because of that thing as a
Mhm.
child that maybe isn't even it wasn't even in a social context or something.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm. Another thing you'll see is, I work with clients who are struggling with just, let's say, just adapting social, let's
Yeah.
say, and or they are at a point where they just don't think they're good enough at anything, and if you go back into their childhood, their parents were always expecting high grades, and when they didn't get them, it was comments like, "Oh, you could have done better. Why didn't you do this?" Now those seem like innocent comments, but when you hear that repetitively over and over throughout your childhood, by the time you're adults and you're going into a work environment, you're always seeking that approval. You're always seeking that, did I do good enough? And you're always thinking, or often people will land on, I'm never good enough, because that internal message they've been taught their whole life has been, you could have done better.
Mhm.
Even if it's their best, it's always that push to do better. And, some parents do that out of a loving nature, not realizing the trauma they're creating in their
Mhm.
child long term.
So you had therapists before.
Myself, yes.
Yes. And you learned a bunch of things about yourself through that therapy. Have you learned even more about yourself now from doing all the studying?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I still see a therapist
Yeah.
myself. So it is recommended a therapist continue to see a therapist, because now we're not just carrying our own traumas, our own histories, but now we're also carrying our clients' information, and that can weigh heavy on a clinician when they're always doing that as their full-time job. And so it's a really interesting dynamic now, having a therapist doing therapy with a therapist, because even in therapy, it's often okay, well, what does that mean? Or what would you say to your own client if you're going through that? Or what is the psychology behind it? You're always re-evaluating things, and you're understanding it. That doesn't mean we do a good job at taking care of ourselves. That doesn't mean that I've got it all figured out and I don't have mental health struggles, or I don't have days where I'm down or depressed. I'm just more aware of it, and I'm aware of the tools. Like a lot of things, it's easier to tell other people what to do, and hard to do it yourself. And I find myself sometimes in that position. But yeah, I'm aware of kind of why I do what I do.
Okay.
And it makes doing therapy easier.
I think people in ministry don't realize that need to offload and to have somebody else that just listens, that just will hear what you're going through. I connect now with 3 pastors, and a number of times each of them have said to me, I thought I was the only person going through that. I thought I was the only person who thought like that. And so when I was in ministry, I always had at least one person, now be seeing maybe one person for certain things in my own life, but I always saw a different person who I went into about every 6 months, and just I thought of it like a vomiting session. It was just like, here's all the thing, and they
He's talking about me the whole time.
Yeah.
Like, God, this is what he did. This is what Carrie did now.
But I found
Intern
it was-
sleeping on my couch.
It was a great way to get perspective, and to I a number of those comments stuck with me. So the next time when I was in that situation, it would be, I remember what that person said, and I found it just very helpful.
Is there, or was there, a huge learning curve for how to interact with a client? Because you know how if someone comes to me with a problem and I will give advice, but you don't
I don't give
do
advice.
that. You ask them questions.
Yes. Yeah.
Is that hard? Or was it hard to learn to like keep the advice back or something? Or
So part of the learning process or the education process is to take 2 semesters of what we call Skills Lab. And in Skills Lab, we're counseling each other. So it's 3 students. One's a counselor, one acts as the client, and one acts as the observer. And then there's a TA in the room kind of monitoring it. And in that's where we start developing those skills. And they just let you do it. And they, at the end of each little session you do, the TA is speaking into it. Okay, you can't do this, and you can do that. And ethically, that is just, no, we don't give advice. We don't even divulge personal information about ourselves. And so in that year of doing that skills lab, we're learning that skill. Now, when you actually get into, say, the internship, where you're actually meeting people for the first time, there's so much stuff going through your head as to, I can't say this, I can't do this, I can't do that, I can't do that. And sometimes that slips out, that advice giving or that leading. We call it actually a leading. It's not necessarily advice we're giving. It's leading the question or leading the comment you're giving that kind of suggests maybe this is what's going on. And that does happen as you're developing as a therapist. But over time, you learn not to do that. Again, one of the nice things about being a qualifying therapist is that I am paired with a supervisor throughout my internship, which I just finished. But weekly, I got to sit with the supervisor and go through all my cases and just conceptualize with her and say, this happened. And she's able to speak in to kind of guide me to make sure that I'm developing those skills correctly and with ethics in mind. Now that I'm done my internship and working, I only see my supervisor once a month. But once I'm done my 450, actually no, it's 1,000 hours actually do have to drop a supervisor. I don't think I will, because I think, like you said, like having that person that you can go to and just say, or I don't know what to do with this particular case, or I'm struggling with this, or I don't know this modality or this, I've never worked with somebody with this. You've got that mentor supervisor that just speaks into what you're doing and gives you that kind of relief of, okay, I'm not doing it wrong. Oh, I am doing it wrong. How do I change that? So
How does it work with, because you're at Christian school
yeah,
or at university?
yeah.
You did a ton of biblical counseling as a pastor. Like,
Two different
it,
animals. Like
it's
that's
to-
apples, oranges.
yeah,
Yeah,
but that's what I'm saying.
totally
Like,
different.
you are learning that in some sort of Christian context. Like,
Mhm.
when you stand were counseling people, you would bring in the wisdom and advice and stories for, to make things applicable or whatever. I don't know the exact where I'm going, but there's
That's-
somewhere I want to go with
That's
this.
more peer counseling.
Yeah.
No, I think pastors need
Yeah,
to
so you have a duty to
adapt
do
more.
this, don't?
Yeah, but I think we one, they're not trained enough. So
Yeah.
there are things in my life that put me right in the middle of counseling sessions where I observed professionals who do this for a living. I went, oh, that's how they conduct themselves. That's how they hand it. And so that began to bleed into me.
Mm-hmm.
But in a church, you are on a different level. I think as a pastor, you need to know, like, when am I over my head? And I think that most pastors think they're in the shallow end when they're over their head.
Mm-hmm.
And you can do a lot of damage if you don't know some of the clinical things that you should be doing, or when you should be handing off this, or at least part of this, to somebody else. I think you do damage not only to the person but to the people around, because you're not just a person. There's families and relatives, and there's such interconnectivity inside of the church that before you know it, you can way overstep your bounds.
But your job as a pastor that you don't have, Rebecca, is that you're shepherding the person. So you have a direction that whatever the problem is, you're trying to find, okay, where is the direction that problem should get, in the way it should get solved.
Right.
And the sort of a result in mind. Whereas, Rebecca, what you're doing, it's sort of like, here's your problem. Let's help you discover a way to. But you're doing it also in
Or here
some
the
kind of
presenting
biblical,
things that I want to deal with, and then you begin to give direction.
I don't give direction. I guide. I walk alongside. I use my knowledge of modalities in psychology to be able, I know I can hypothesize in my own mind and case conceptualize if this is what they're presenting with, and this I can see where their goal is and what their end, where they want to get. How do I walk alongside that person to discover who they are, to understand why are these things happening in my life? What am I doing, or what's happening around me that is triggering me? How do I manage those triggers? How do I manage that stress so that I can utilize some tools to move forward? And this trauma, this grief, it's still in their life. I mean, trauma you can't erase. It's how do I live alongside that?
Yeah.
Right. So it was described to me once as take a tree, and you open it up and you see all the rings, and you can see when a tree has had a really bad year or some damage happened. There's always going to be that spot there, but eventually those rings go around and it grows around it. That still is there, and the tree grew around it. That's kind of what I'm trying to help a person do, is how do I cope with this in my life and let it not affect me and what I'm doing every day and going forward. Acknowledging that it exists, processing why it might have happened, and then moving forward. What I look at with Stand as pastoral and biblical counseling is more on that discipleship end of walking alongside somebody. He's allowed to share his life with that person. He's allowed to tell stories, his own examples, and just kind of walk alongside and pastor that person and be in the same church as that person. As a counselor, a therapist, ethically, I don't counsel people I know.
Yeah.
I don't counsel family, friends, even friends of friends that I may be in contact with.
Friends of friends
Friends
that
of
are
friends.
friends.
So like
Yeah,
if
like I cannot have a
So-
connection with them because there's that. It becomes a dual
Yeah.
relationship.
could we even do something though now where it's like, hey, can we do like a mock thing so that people can kind of hear what it's like, and you would be asking, are you even allowed to do that?
I can do that if we make acknowledge that this is a mock, it's a
Okay,
vignette, it's not.
but I
necessarily
could be
real.
answering the real, like honestly. That's what I mean.
True, but I'm
So
not your
it-
therapist, so there's an understanding
So
here.
it
I'm
would
not
get
your
it would,
therapist.
it'd be
So-
at
Yeah.
best murky
Murky.
whether we
It
could
would be
do that.
murky, yeah.
Okay.
So at all intakes, if you do the chat GPT of an intake, it's like, here's what I'm experiencing, here's what I want to experience. Now, in some ways, you do set a course, Rebecca. You by what you've studied and learned,
Mhm.
as the person says, here's the presenting problem, here's what I want to see happening in my life, not the presenting problem, but a different, you do in some sense have a path.
Well, so I sit with my client. Yeah, I take their history. I'm looking at everything from their physical health, so it's eating, sleeping, exercise, medications, because all of that affects our ability to interact with our environment and our stress levels. I look at their family history. What did they grow up? What kind of environment did they grow up? Where did they grow up? How many siblings did they had? Were their parents married, divorced? Were they Christians or not? Because I do work at a Christian organization, although we see anybody and everybody, we do have that element of being able to bring in Christian worldviews to it. And then I asked at the very end, I said, so what are your goals? If we work together, we need to have a goal. How are you going to know that at the end of our therapy sessions together, what do you want to be able to do, or where do you want to be? Right? So that's kind of that big goal that we set for us. And then along the way, I'll say, okay, let's set some smaller goals, because as we go, we want to be feeling like we're accomplishing something. So if this is our big goal, what are the smaller steps we can take, or what are the smaller goals we can reach that makes us feel like we're moving in a forward motion? So as we get to that first goal, we think, okay, let's reevaluate. Is this big goal still the goal that you want to get now that we've processed this much information and we've reached this next goal? Now let's go on to the next goal. What is this next goal? You know, we might set 3 or 4 smaller goals and then one big goal. And then once we hit that big goal, it's okay. Are you ready to end therapy and move on with life? And do you feel comfortable? Are you confident that you're able to do this? A lot of times that's where therapy ends. And sometimes it's like, in doing therapy, in doing that goal, we realize, well, there's all these other things that have happened in this person that's actually affecting them. So as I'm working with somebody and I know what my end goal is, or their end goal is, and I'm guiding them to that goal, so I guess directing them to that goal, and I'm hearing stuff coming up, and I'm like, you know what, that item or that thing that you just mentioned sounds like it's actually a really big thing. Because we're going this direction to get this goal, we're going to take that thing, we're going to put it over here on the bookshelf. We're going to come back to it because I think it's going to be really important for us to focus on that at some point.
Yeah.
But right now, this is where we're headed. If this ever becomes so big that we need to take it off and pause this, we will. But if not, as we get closer to that end goal, we're going to visit all these things that we put on the bookshelf that we haven't addressed and see, do we need to continue in therapy a little bit longer so we can kind of address those kind of things? Because even if you reach that big goal, but you've got like 10 things on the bookshelf that is still affecting you, that long-term goal that you've reached may not be sustainable if you're still carrying the weight of all this other stuff.
And sometimes you don't have the energy to move forward on the thing on the shelf. And I've even found personally, there's times you need to take a break from it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a weird job though, because it's like if you do a great job, you get fired at the end.
That's the goal. Your goal is to.
You're like, I don't want to get paid by you anymore.
Yeah. But it's it's a bittersweet, I think, experience for the therapist, because you watch this person grow and change.
I bet.
And get better. And you've got this therapeutic relationship there where you're able to talk and you know the person, you know how they're going to respond, and you're able to guide them. And then all of a sudden, it's like, you know, your teenage kid moving out and going off to the university. Like, you still want that ability to guide them, but yet you need to let go and let them figure out life. And So yeah, that bittersweet.
The one thing you'd said just before about like, putting the stuff on a bookshelf or whatever, it did make me think of how life doesn't stop and
right.
pause at the point where you like begin therapy.
Mhm.
And it's like I don't know. Actually, I may have been in therapy at the time. I can't remember. I know it started just after, but like at one point in time, if I had been, my mom would have died in the middle of
Yeah.
therapy.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, let's just continue on with the thing that we were working on last week. Like, probably not.
No.
Right? Like, this is and that's happening to people.
All
They
the
lose
time.
their job. They have a kid. They have what like life adds all these other stressors in that you have no thought of, happening. And, or even if you do, I learned about like positive stressors, like things you think of are good, but they are just filling your tank more.
Yeah.
And that is bringing whatever changes to your life. You also talked about then the seeing the results and like seeing someone change. And where are you at? Because
Myself?
we said last time, you said something like you'd seen whatever growth and you're like, but I think this is something that like these things are just like always gonna be with you.
Yeah.
And now years later, has that though stayed true?
Oh yeah.
Or is it getting, I guess, less and less power still over the years? And I mean,
it changes. It comes in waves. So I did my undergrad. I completed that. I did a graduate certificate in biblical counseling, finished that. I did therapy through that. And things went really well for my, that time. And I thought, okay, yeah, things are changing. And yeah, it's still there, but they're changing and they're more manageable. Then I started my master's immediately following finishing at Heritage and graduating. And doing my master's, it's a master's of divinity, so it's got a large theological component to it, but then it is the clinical counseling side of it. What better way to understand clinical counseling than to really pick apart your own life and evaluate your own life and start kind of implementing some of those things that you're learning in your own life. In doing that, so it resurfaced a lot of my trauma, things that I already processed that. Why is it now starting to bother me again? So I had to reinitiate my therapy at a much more aggressive pace and really start processing my trauma that in a way that I had never done it in 20 years. And the reason for that is because now all of a sudden I understood the psychology behind it. And I understood that if I don't start really actually processing my trauma, because I've been able to talk about it but sweep it under the carpet and then keep moving forward, I realized that if I don't deal with my own trauma and my own grief, I wouldn't be able to effectively counsel somebody else, because every time somebody else brings up their trauma, if it is similar to mine or enacts any sort of trigger on my part, I'm going to react.
Right.
And then it's what we call countertransference, where my problems end up being influencing or directing how I treat my clients. And so I had to go into some deep therapy, which was destabilizing. And it was really hard. And so, I've been doing that really aggressively for the last year, and I've had my ups and downs, and I've had my moments as like, I don't know that I can do this counseling thing because I can't even handle my own trauma. Yeah. So it's front and center. And you're talking about, and Stan, sometimes you have to put it aside. There have been things that we've had to say, you know what, right now, we're not going to go right here into this trauma because it's too much for you. Yeah. Because as you said, life is happening right now. Yeah. And I'm 8 weeks away from finishing my master's completely. My life is about to shift completely and it's going to look differently. And so I'm processing kind of that bittersweet excitement of ending school for a while and not knowing what that's going to look like while counseling, while doing my trauma treatment. And so it's balancing what is good in the moment to be focusing on, putting some stuff aside on the bookshelf and saying, we're going to come back to that maybe when you're done school and you figured out what it's like to not be a student for a while, and then we'll go back to it. So
it reminds me of archaeology. Like you'd have these tells, it'd say like in Israel or whatever, and they would be like a mound and they'd scrape off the top and be like, oh, there was a city here 1,000 years ago. And they do a little more work and, oh, that one was built on another city that was like 1,500 years. And they just keep like the more, it's like, oh, we weren't done when we found that last civilization. There's another one buried under there, and it's like you just keep
it's like
going.
an onion.
And it's like, you think that this is where everything is. It's like, if I solve that issue, and I know this has been in my life, it's like everything points to that being the problem, and it's like, oh wait, this actually goes back further than that, and it goes back further, and
it's trying to get to the root of what is causing the long-term issues. And so I do a lot of what we call family systems work, which is really picking apart the person's life. What happened at this age? What happened at this age? And you just keep going back and back, and you're just discovering the influence our families and our environments have had on us. And it's like peeling back layers. And when your mom said that to you, how did you feel? And how did you react to that? Or like in your case, you lost your mom a few years back, and what did that stir up for you, right? And I would peel that apart. Like, what does that mean, not having a mom going forward? What is that like, having to now, be married and not have that connection, right? And so we'll pick that apart and kind of look at even what did grief and mourning look like in your family growing up? Did you guys as a family grieve and mourn people that you've lost? And what examples were they to you on what grief should look like? And how did you internalize that yourself? And then that's what I'm looking at. I'm looking at how you internalized your environment, not necessarily the environment around you, but how did you internalize that as an individual?
That first part, I think, is difficult for someone who's going into therapy, because you're like, I want to get to my problem, and you're asking me about all my relationships. I'm like, my problem is at work. Why are you asking me about my childhood friends or my parents or my siblings? And I remember having to fill out things, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, no, nothing here. But it's like, you need to look at everything to be able to zero in on why things have gotten where they are.
Why are things at work so stressful? Where is the lack of learning to manage stress? So let's go a little farther back. How did you manage stress as a teenager? How did your parents react to you when you were stressed out? Now, every therapist has a different angle they're going to take, a different modality, a different method in which they're going to process your trauma. I'm still at that learning stage, so I'm kind of dabbling in at quite a few different ones, just to see where do I land. I also feel that when I work with my clients, I like to be client-centered. So, I mean, I could take a modality, which is a method in which we're going to treat somebody, and take my client and try to fit them in that box of that modality. It's like putting a square inside of a circle sometimes. It just doesn't work, or a square, I want to look at the client, see what the client presents with, and then maybe grab a little bit from each modality that I think is going to be effective for what that client is actually struggling with.
Maybe for people listening, can you just kind of unfold modalities? Because, I mean, if I was listening, I was like chocolate a la mode, or where?
Modalities. A common modality would be one that a lot of people will have heard of is CBT, or cognitive behavioral therapy. So the way we think, feel, and behave. There's dialectical behavior therapy. There is schema therapy. They're just different types of therapies and different approaches we take and what we focus on. EFT is emotionally focused therapy, so we're looking at the emotions and their role that emotions are playing in.
I have cow therapy. I go out and hug cows.
Yeah, animal therapy. Yeah.
And
how many different kinds of modality are there?
I couldn't even tell you. There's a lot.
Okay.
Because there's CBT is one of the older ones, and from CBT we get other ones that kind of branched out of that, because maybe CBT works for certain struggles or mental illnesses, but
it
DBT,
evolves.
It evolves because dialectical behavioral therapy, you'll use that for people like with borderline personality disorder, or cluster, I think B personality disorders. Schema therapy, you're going to use that for more of the complex PTSD, like a more form post-traumatic stress disorder. So again, it depends what the person is struggling with. With marriage or couples counseling, many people use the Gottman theory. So that's a theory that guy name, I'm assuming Gottman, because I haven't learned that theory yet.
I think it's because the therapist says something and okay, I got it, man.
Maybe.
Stan, who is Rebecca now? Because you've watched all of her journey from I mean, from as far as I'm aware of your story, it's like he saw you at kind of rock bottom
He has.
and has
Yes.
seen what's happened and
Yeah.
growth and everything.
Darkness, light, day, night is just and I see God working, and I I watch the peel back. Now she's much more apt to tell me where I'm wrong now, and that's kind of been interesting.
And because that was the other thing that came out in the last podcast is you were scary, Mr. Biker Man, when she first met you.
Yes, yes, yes. I
and
remember
you
the
had to
first time
stay
I
in the basement.
saw
Yeah,
him.
yeah. No, it has been just an amazing journey watching what God has done, what He's doing, and then there's pondering on what's to come. Like I think, okay, what's the next thing? What's the next? What's the next key that God's going to turn to unlock even more in Rebecca's life? But uh, I'm not sure in those early days of knowing you that I thought we'd be here. But then I think there's a tendency to underestimate God.
Is it hard, or sorry, was it hard, like in your marriage? I guess it's a personal question, but like it's like Sam is married to a different person
A totally
than
different
before,
person,
and
yes.
I know they talk about when we went through premarital counseling, my wife and I with you, Stan, about you're married to 6 people in your lifetime usually or something like
Yeah,
that. But I think most of those changes typically aren't probably as big of a change as you experience. And
Yeah.
I'm assuming you and Sam have talked about that and been like, oh, I mean, maybe things are because maybe you start speaking up for yourself in different ways, or I don't know how
Yeah.
things changed.
Yeah, things have really changed. Throughout my mental health, we were raising 4 kids. That was hard. That was really hard. And to see change, like for Sam to see change in me, it was difficult for him to see that at first. And then once the kids left and the stress really lessened, and then I really kind of pushed forward through a lot of those harder years, he really started to see changes. And then when I mentioned even say going to school, I remember you having to tell him, no, it's okay. Because he was so afraid that I wouldn't be able to do it. I'm ADHD and I'm all over the place and I never really finish anything and I'm always wanting change. And he was really afraid that this is a lot of money we're investing. Can she actually do it? Is she ready to do it? And what is the mental health going to be like for her? And I know that you encouraged Sam saying, no, don't worry. That ADHD is going to work for her, not against her. Now 7 years later, a lot of times Sam and I will sit there and just think back. It's been last year was 20 years since I had my first mental breakdown. So it was a very pivotal year for us to really sit back and recognize how much growth, how much change, where God has taken me, kind of the ups and downs of that, not just in my own personal life, but in our marriage, in our kids, in just life around us, the people around us. And it's really, really, it's very fun. It's kind of, it's like, wow, God, what did you just do in my life? Because I would never 20 years ago have imagined I'd be the one not in the patient chair, but in the counselor's chair, helping other people, using my own experiences. Even though I can't share my experiences, I can still use them to evoke change.
And how did the kids take it? Because again, mom's different.
Mom's different.
Mom's got tattoos now.
Mom has a tattoo. Yes, that was this. My tattoo actually is. I did that just before Christmas to symbolize like 20 years of change, and I have a lot of scars on my arm that I, for a lot of reasons wanted to cover, and I had Japanese characters written on my arm that translate to "out of brokenness, flowers bloom or blossoms bloom." Really to signify what God has done in my life. There was a lot of brokenness I came from, a lot of trauma I came from, and yet I'm a different person, and I've bloomed into a person that can stand on my own, can think on my own, can challenge to really change how I think about my life, but also to come alongside people and put that hope in them that, yeah, I get it. You're going through a really hard time, but trust me, believe me, God can do amazing things. And here's a good example of, just take my life. and I don't shy away from talking about my story anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I tend to use it as an example, even through school and talking about in my classes what.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just you. It's the whole family constellation. You've got like Sam looks like he hasn't changed in some ways.
Well, he doesn't
and yet
age.
He doesn't. Although
his hair changes length. That's about it.
That threw me off when I was back to the church. I looked over and I don't know that I had not seen him or not, but all of a sudden there was no hair, and I didn't know what to do with that. But
Speaking of,
but
I've got
Sam,
white in here now. That wasn't there the last time I did one of these, I don't think.
Are you saying that your wife has caused white hair in your life?
I'm saying I stopped.
Maybe I think it's the other way around. Maybe.
I started learning how to drink coffee properly, so it didn't just dribble down into my beard.
Okay. But I'd say Sam is like not just you change.
Yeah.
It's changed the whole family.
Yeah, the
And
whole
I
family.
would say the kids have changed too.
Yeah.
In their own journey, and so it's not just a you story; it's an us story.
It's an entire family transition or transformation. All of my kids, even my son, who has gone through a lot of struggles, is actually doing really well. And you would think what our family went through, we would have fallen apart, just gone our separate ways, because it was pretty chaotic, pretty traumatic. And yet it has brought our family so close together. It's amazing. We've been on an incredibly hard journey together as a family, and yet at the end we're that much stronger.
What would you say are like some telltale signs that like maybe I should go and contact someone, speak to someone? Like, you know, there's the typical thing, or you know, the Stan, you would ask me, like, are you thinking of harming yourself or someone else? Then yeah, we need to get someone else involved. But like that's kind of at a level that I assume, I guess no, because they asked that, there's a lot of people who don't maybe think much of that. But there's a lot of things that people are going through that they really do dismiss in their own life as just being, I don't know, life or hard or.
Yeah, I mean, life does not need to be hard.
Yeah.
To have therapy.
Yeah.
You know, a good example is I'm transitioning from being a full-time student into full-time employment. That transition alone is reason to go for therapy, you know, because it is a huge change. I've been identifying as a student for so long. What's it like not having assignments and due dates and that pressure of, you know, teachers wanting things and needing to get those high grades? It could be an impending illness, or like, you know, your mom is diagnosed and you know, she doesn't have that much long to live. How do you manage through that time? How do you cope with that anticipatory grief? You know, you might want to go to counseling for that. It might be you're moving from Colombia to Canada. That's a transition. That's a change. You might want therapy for that. You might have trauma from your past that all of a sudden you're noticing that maybe certain people, when they look away a certain way, kind of cause the back of your hair to, you know, the neck, the hairs on your neck to stand up, and all of a sudden you got a little bit more anxiety. You know what? Maybe you want to go to therapy for that. There's so many reasons to go to therapy, and it doesn't have to be because something is wrong. Everything can be going great, and things just might be changing. For parents who their kids are moving out, how do you relate with your spouse all of a sudden when you've just spent 20, 25 years parenting children, and all of a sudden you're sitting next to this guy that is supposed to be your husband that you don't recognize anymore because it's not the person you married. Last time you were single and alone.
But like, Sam is still the same for you. He
hasn't
aged.
Sam hasn't aged. He's still the gentle, caring guy. He's slowing down. He's moving through a little slower. You know, he's aging in you know, but still the same sweet guy. Yeah. But yeah, so there's a lot of reason to go to therapy. Could be just the role that you play, like the job you have, like Stan said, as a pastor, having that outlet to talk about the things that aren't okay to talk about in your profession. And you need somewhere to just offload.
And it depends. I mean, some people have a natural network of wise counsel around them that have been developed.
Is there anything that you wanted to touch upon specifically that like we haven't asked?
Gosh, talked about a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
I
Could ask more Mormon questions.
No, that's okay. No, I've released myself from that.
Yeah.
I think for me this year, when school's done, I had really hoped to, right away go into a PhD, which has now been kind of put on the back burner. And I started the year, or ended last year, quite stressed, quite overwhelmed, I would say. And started this year really with kind of that theme verse of "Be still and know that I'm God," and just making more space in my life to do devotions and be in the Scripture and be in the Word and just really listening to God. And just in the last week, because that's been kind of my motto this year, my kind of focus, is just to kind of get some rest in knowing that God is in control, that He is, got my life in His hand. And then I got some news this week in regards to the PhD that kind of took me off guard. And it's like, okay, God, obviously it's not time yet. And maybe, I need to rest. And so I'm entering now, once I'm done school, a period of just focusing on my work.
See, that's different than the Rebecca I remember. Because
Okay.
the Rebecca I remember would push harder.
Yeah.
And that willingness to listen and just step back, I think that is, really a sign of great maturity.
Yeah.
In that.
I mean, it came with lots of tears this week. A lot of tears of, what do you mean I can't do my PhD? Right? That kind of that wanting to push back. And in 7 years of schooling, now Stan and Lori are still really great friends, great mentors for me, but they also live farther away. And God has supplied me with some incredible people in my life right now that have mentored me and spoken into my life and just really helped me to grasp onto that. It's okay. It's not like this is never going to happen. It's right now God is saying no. Rest in that, knowing that God's in control and the door's not slammed shut, locked, and the key's thrown out. It's wait on God to provide. And maybe God's just saying, I'm taking you in a different direction. And so being open to that and listening to Scripture and listening to the people around me that are speaking to my life, that know me, that care about me, and have that same view, like Christian view, worldview, and same devotion to God to help me through these times when, naturally, I want to push back and say, nobody says no to me. If I want something, I'm going to go and get it. And now it's like,
like a supervillain.
Yeah. I've been that. And so that I think is one of the bigger changes in me, is resting in knowing that it's okay to take time off and rest in God. And it's something,
and that's one of the hardest things I think for people is the okay with the how things are.
How things are. Yeah. And I think that's something I do with my clients a lot too, is just sitting with them and saying, well, what if this doesn't change? Can you be okay with that? Or how can we be okay with that? How can we rest in this idea that maybe this is where God has us for a reason? How do we learn from this situation?
Stan, anything else from you?
No.
You want to take us out for old time's sake?
If you remember how to.
Well, it has been good to sit and to listen to all that God's been doing, and I would encourage each of us to remember I did.
To remember.
He doesn't know.
To remember. You've done it, and if anyone,
I got it.
If anyone doesn't know, there's been however many episodes of podcasts, I don't know, but 50 something. You weren't on all of them, but you did this exact outro on a radio program for many years before.
Yes.
And I said, don't end your day without a word with God.
Word, oh God, your word to me, you're making me